Hello, everybody there. I want you guys to please welcome my awesome client here who passed his structured interview. And I ain't gonna say his name. I'm not gonna say what he did. I want him to tell you this and what he did and how he did it. So first of all, are we talking to today, please, sir?
My name is Isaiah Green, United States Air Force active duty member.
Isaiah, we gotta ask you first of all, which federal position did you go for?
I went for the Border Patrol agent.
Okay, now we have a situation. Isaiah's in the military. He's going for BP. So we have to ask you. I mean, people probably wondering right now, why Border Patrol? Why that transition and why that, Isaiah?
Border Patrol was not necessarily first on my radar, but I ended up going to a job fair at here at JBLM, and the recruiter he caught my attention and told me that, hey, this is a very rewarding career. There's good money in it, and there's a there's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of career progression, but ultimately what he hung his hat on was just the fun that he has and all the things that he's gotten to do in his career, especially with the career progression and just the bond that he's made with his brothers and sisters in BPA because he was a former military member as well. So he has found a new sense of purpose outside of the military. And I know for a lot of military members, once they separate, it's hard for them to find a purpose. So he was explaining that this is another way of, like you say, continuing the mission, having a purpose that's bigger than yourself to continue serving your country. So that's what really drew me into it, and I ended up applying.
That's a really great explanation. Of the vets that I get to come into my coaching program, about maybe about 50% say the same thing you're saying. And what I hear a lot of times is the bond they make and things of that nature. So I have to ask you, why did you go from Air Force into the civilian world? Why another paramilitary? Well, military to paramilitary. Why that? Why not the civilian world?
Because criminal justice, law enforcement has always been like my dream. I've always wanted to be a federal agent in one way or the other, and being a Border Patrol agent, it serves that purpose. Having that title of being a federal agent, ever since I want to say in high school, once I started taking, my life seriously.
Wow.
I knew that I wanted to be a federal agent, especially watching all the movies and TV shows about federal agents. I really love the action. I have to get hands on. I can't sit behind a computer screen all day. I really want to be out in the field, solving cases and, deterring crime. So that's always been a goal of mine.
Common theme again. Cannot sit behind a desk for 8 hours, 10 hours. You have that same type blood in you. I can hear from your answers there. Obviously, you want something in the field, doing things, right? That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, sir.
So I have to ask you this then. How far are you in the process so far? Where you started and where you at now? Where are you at now?
So right now, I just got a call from my background investigator a couple of days ago. We just scheduled a time to go over like the SF-86 and everything of that nature. And there is no definitive time frame on obviously when that is able to be conducted, closed, and also my polygraph. He just told me to keep an eye out for any emails or phone calls for the polygraph schedule. That could be any day now. So just to keep a heads up. So I did my medical, I did my physical, my drug screening, and all that is good. Well, my medical is still in process, but other than the medical and the polygraph, everything has been complete.
How was the physical? I hear things from easy, very hard. How was it for you, the physical part?
I was actually very kind of nervous about the physical portion of it because I thought it was actually going to be, like a CBP agent, proctoring your exam, so that I was kind of worried. So I was really preparing for it. I was doing push-ups and sit-ups and trying to focus on my step test. But once I got to it, it was actually way easier than I thought. So I really over-prepared myself for that test, but, I passed with flying colors, so it's really nothing to be concerned about. I would say, though, definitely, stay active for sure, keep your push-ups in, your sit-ups, and, at least, walk, get your steps in for sure, because that 5-minute step test, it's not the most difficult thing in the world,
Right.
but, it'll definitely get your heart racing after a couple of minutes.
Oh, for sure. Okay, definitely. So it wasn't that bad for you. Just you tell people here right now, stay in some kind of shape, though, right? That's what you're saying, Isaiah.
Yeah, definitely stay prepared.
Hmm.
Because anything can happen, obviously. And I know that there's some people that, from I've been told from the people who were proctoring the exam, that they weren't able to pass their physical exam because they came very unprepared, right? So just stay in somewhat decent shape. You don't have to be in great physical shape to pass it, because
Hmm.
I wasn't even in great physical shape, but I
Ah,
definitely stayed prepared, right? So I'm still in the process of getting into better shape. I
right.
could have been in better shape, but, I was just definitely prepared.
That's a key takeaway. You said even you are still in the process of getting even better prepared physically, right? That's a good
Yes,
thing to
sir.
take away already, correct? So
Yes,
you're
sir.
still doing your physical fitness and everything, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Got to ask you, when I first met you, we had a conversation, of course. You know, obviously to me, you're a very smart person. That was obvious. It was easy to see that. So I know you cannot cannot divulge any questions at all, but why'd you come to me? How did you come to my program? I want to know this.
Crazy thing about that is I saw, because I was just looking up structured interview kind of tips and tricks, right? So I was just kind of divulging through YouTube to try to see how to better prepare myself. And I actually know a current Border Patrol agent who I did have talks about with the structured interview test. And he told me, it's really about having common sense, right? He couldn't really divulge into everything that they asked him and how it was, but he kind of gave me a little layout of it and just telling me, hey, like there's really not a lot out there for you to kind of prepare,
Mm,
just listen to the questions, right? So the more I kept digging in YouTube, I found clips of, your videos, and I thought maybe that was the way just watching the videos would help me prepare. And
mm.
I saw a video, it's funny because I saw a video about you saying, in these interviews you can't AI your way out of this, right? Because I was definitely, trying to use AI to, kind of help me prepare. And, that was definitely the wrong way to go about it. So I definitely suggest anybody who's going through this exam, the structured interview, do not use AI. It will lead you astray. Trust me, I thought I was prepared with AI, but once I got with Coach Mitch, it was the complete opposite. I would have 100% failed. I would have not been prepared. You
Wow.
know, so once I saw your content and hearing your success rates and seeing other people's stories, I had to get in contact with you because I thought it was just the right way to go.
I absolutely appreciate that, man. I really do. And you're already geared for the first minute I met you. I knew you were focused, and so yeah, I appreciate your approach too. Very common sense. You're a very smart person, and I want to ask you about the for the interview practice with me. Did that help you? And of course, you can't divulge questions. We know that already. He can't say anything, guys. It's all in the NDA. He can't do nothing at all as far as divulging any questions. But as it, did you find helpful process with my coaching versus the actual for you?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Because the way you approached our interview sessions to the way that the actual interview was set up was very spot on. And I think you were definitely tougher on me. You were more critical. You know, you had a lot of insight. So once they started asking me the questions, everything slowed down, and I was able to remember key points, familiarities, how to
Yes,
handle myself in certain situations, what
yes.
to when to say it, and just the speed on how I could say it and the clarity in which I was able to answer those questions. So your interview prep definitely helped me. And mind you, we only had 2 days to prepare. We had 2 days to prepare. So you were definitely locked in. I was locked in, and we definitely got down to business, for the 2 days that we had before my interview, you know. So yeah, your interviews, definitely helped because it was exactly in line with what you said how it was going to be.
I appreciate that, man. I really do. And I forgot the 2 days. We were rushed that way. We were just hammering that. I remember that. I was like, oh man, we got to pick this day. I remember that so well. That's right. Now I remember that. So good. So, first of all, thank you for that, man. It's really humbling to hear that. I do put my heart and soul into my coaching, but thank you for understanding that. I try my best too to make sure my folks pass. It's very important, of course, right? And when I say my folks, you guys are on my team. You guys are my folks, of course, right? Isaiah, one thing I want to ask you though is, can you give people who are looking at you right now two-way advice for BP and advice for the interview. Like, and of course you can't give too much, I know that, but what advice would you give for going into Border Patrol, and what advice would you give to take on the interview?
For going into Border Patrol, I would just say trust the process, right?
Mm.
It's a long process. It's really a waiting game, right? So it's not a sprint. It's definitely a marathon, and that's one thing that I've definitely had to tell myself, not to get too excited just seeing a check box in my application portal, right? Because we all want the process to move as quickly as possible, right? But everybody's timelines are different, so that's one thing that people have to understand, that you're not just going to get in overnight, right? It could be anywhere from 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to even a year out, right? So currently I don't know how long my process is going to take. I have noticed that my process is actually going by pretty quickly. I don't
Mm.
know if that has anything to do with me being in the military, and a lot of it is streamlined that way because I know they love military members. But for especially the structured interview,
Yeah.
100% I have to say to everybody out there watching, definitely get on Coach Mitch's schedule. Definitely take advantage. Definitely make the sacrifice. Save up. Because I definitely made the sacrifice. I thought I could do it on my own. But I really had no one to go to kind of ask for advice, for help. To ask me questions, right? Because nobody I know has been in the situation, right? So they couldn't really critique me. They couldn't really give me hey, you need to improve in this area and that area, your speaking tone, your confidence, what key points you need to hit, what you should and shouldn't say, right? So I would definitely encourage everybody to go through Coach Mitch's program. It works because I was very, very unsure of myself, but
Mm.
Coach Mitch, you definitely gave me the confidence and the structure to go in there and just kill that interview.
Excellent. Thank you very much, man. Yeah, I'm so proud of you. When I got your email, I was like, yes, he did it, So, if you can hear me, man, you'd be like, what's this guy going on for? I'm looking at my car like, oh my God, he did it, because your email came while I was driving my vehicle. I was like, oh, look at him. Yes, man, I'm so happy, it's like for me, it's each you went through this and you got your pass. I was like, it's a huge milestone for me too, I share that with you. Let's talk about family. Now, you don't got to tell your family situation, but you will, when you get done with Artesia, New Mexico, you're going to go somewhere. Is your family ready to move and all that stuff with you?
Yes, sir. My wife, she definitely wants to get out of Washington State. She's tired of the rain and the cold. She wants to be somewhere sunny. And I think it's going to be a great experience for our family, our kids, to move and see something else. I know it's going to be tough on my daughter because she's already had to move around a lot, just me being in the military,
Mhm.
going to different schools and meeting new people, every year. But, I think it's going to be a good experience, and she's excited. Her main thing and my wife's main thing is, I don't care where we go as long as we have a pool in our backyard, So I definitely chose somewhere where it's hot, where we can get a pool, so they're definitely excited for this new change.
I love that. I love that a lot. So you, yeah, it is you're military, so the moving around is kind of part of the job, part of the lifestyle, right?
Yes, sir.
So you guys don't know Isaiah like I know him, but he's a very smart guy. So I got to ask you, and I didn't prepare you for this one either, but I want to ask you, what are you looking for in the BP? Because you're going to go through other branches, other. I can see you do more than just the BP role on patrol. What else are you looking at in BP, Isaiah?
My main thing is probably chasing that BORTAC title.
I knew it.
you know,
Yep.
chasing BORTAC, right? That once I looked into BP, especially when I was talking to the recruiter down at the job fair, I asked him, "Hey, what is one of the best careers in Border Patrol that I could do?" And he told me, "If you want to be the cream of the crop of Border Patrol, you want to join BORTAC." So at that point, I really didn't have information on BORTAC. I heard about BORTAC, but really didn't know too much about them, right? So he gave me a pamphlet, told me, hey, look at these guys on YouTube. You'll find a lot of information. So I searched, what BORTAC does in their day-to-day operations, and that was something that really caught my attention, and I knew that, hey, like these guys are the real deal, right? So that's something that I definitely look forward to, trying out, hopefully, a couple years down the road once I get acclimated to being a BORTAC agent.
I told you I could read my guys. I knew you were going for more. I knew that, man. I didn't even ask you before the interview. I was going to pop you on the interview question by surprise here on purpose. I knew you're doing more. So give folks a brief overview about BORTAC. Tell us a little bit about it, Isaiah.
Yeah, so BORTAC is kind of like their special operations unit within BP. So like the best of the best guys, will try out to do all the high risk, search warrants, the fugitive searches across the border, anywhere domestically, also, internationally. That's one thing that I really like too, that they also operate for America's interests internationally. So that's one thing that really, makes me excited that they're always doing something. They're always on the go. They're always training, right? And that's just my lifestyle. I have a fast-paced lifestyle that I've been very acclimated to since I was younger. Always playing sports, always on the move, never staying in one spot too long, right? So having getting to see that this agency has a unit like this really kind of meets my lifestyle, makes me excited.
I like that a lot. Let's regress for 1 minute. So, of course, so questions. The Zoom opens up. You see people looking at you. Just tell us what that feels like. I mean, no, can't do too much on that. But how do you feel? What does it feel like with these guys checking you out through Zoom? What does that feel like for you?
It actually wasn't too bad because of how we prepare for it, right? Our interview sessions, you were very serious. You really set the tone on how these agents were going to be. So as soon as I clicked on the camera, I saw they had the same facial expressions, right? They had the same tone, that everything was the exact same. So I was able to really slow everything down. I was
Mm,
really able to analyze my situation and to not get too ahead of myself, to not be flustered in those situations, because the same facial expressions that they were giving, I was giving back. Right? You have to have that same bearing. You
right,
can't get too high, can't get too low.
right.
So just a straight neutral face, no reaction. Is how I approached it, because that's how they were giving it to me. And it turned out it worked.
I love that. Yeah, like I warn you, like I warn everybody, right? I say I'm a real nice guy, but when interview though, I don't play around because I know it's the same juice, right? I give you the same juice they're going to give you, and you guys, you see Isaiah saying to you, he got prepared with our program, so he was ready for the real deal. So it wasn't a transition at all for you, right? It's kind of like it's another deal to go through, correct?
Yes,
Now,
sir.
let me ask you though. I mean, when you were done, did you feel were they completely stoked the whole time? Do you feel like you passed? Did they give you any kind of indication whether it's like stoked the whole way? How that work?
It's funny because in one of the responses that I gave,
Mhm.
the head interviewer, he asked me, as he was taking notes, he asked me, if I was done with my response, if there's anything I wanted to add. And, confidently, I said no. And I think he might have, kind of messed up or kind of said what he was thinking out loud, but, he was like, oh, that's a good answer, and I heard him say that, and at that point, I really wanted to get excited. I really wanted to, show my emotion, but I couldn't. I had to stay neutral,
Right.
because I knew if I got excited, they probably would have started putting the pressure on me, So I stayed neutral, and like I said, I don't think he meant to say that, but they were, stone faced the entire time, you
All
know,
the whole time, stone face.
the whole time. Not once did I see him smile, the other agent smile at all. They had the same look on their face, asking the question and asking me after if I had anything else to add. So they kept the same demeanor the entire time.
How long did it take for them to get back to you when you were done? A couple days, or how long did it take?
Yeah, so my interview was on Friday and I found out on Sunday. So it was pretty quickly.
Were you checking your portal a lot of what?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I kept refreshing my portal. I was so nervous. I told my wife, I was like, I can't even look. I want you to look first. Not, I was kind of nervous, because like you say, in your method, how you ask or how you respond to the questions, you have a certain way. As soon as they ask a question, you respond a certain way, right? There's things that you're supposed to do and say to these guys, right? So I
Right.
was doing that, but at the very end, like you said, these guys are getting very, very impatient, because I don't know if they're meeting unqualified candidates, unprepared candidates, right? So they're very, very impatient. The interview was very quickly. It was 11 minutes long, and at the end, like I told you, they didn't even give me a chance to ask him anything, right? No questions. They said, "Good luck with your career. Have a good day." And that was the end of the interview, right? So I
Done.
was shocked, like I couldn't even ask. So I was kind of nervous on that part. I couldn't even ask any questions like, "Oh man, did he give me a chance? Do they like me? Do they not? Right? Am I a good
Right.
fit?" So that's why I told my wife, you check first for me. I can't.
So the first person to find out you passed was your wife. She found
Yeah.
out first. Yeah. What
Mhm.
did she say, man? What happened there? That 2 minutes. What happens there? I want to. This is great.
My wife, she had a lot of confidence in me because she would tell me the same thing that you tell me. You're very smart. You're going to school for this. This is something that you want to do in your life. You're a great fit, right? So she was one person that really was in my corner. Just like you. She really confided in me. So it really did take a lot of the stress off, a lot of the nerves off. And as soon as she opened it, she said, "Wow, you passed," And at first I couldn't believe it. And she showed me it said passed. And she told me, she's like, "I love you. I'm proud of you. Like this,
Uh,
So it was a great feeling, So I was able to kind of take a deep breath and, actually enjoy the moment and, yeah, celebrate that with my family.
so we got to give it up to respect for Mrs. Green too, for respecting, for supporting you the whole way through. Correct. And
100%.
this is kind of key too. Family's important, to support the decisions you're making. I mean, you just said it right there through your own wife's support for you. I mean, it's important people have that support. I've done a few videos before though. If you guys don't have family support, you can always find support from friends too.
Oh, 100%.
People, right, right.
100%.
And people around you should be supportive of you. Otherwise, don't have them around you. It's a very difficult process. You said something really key. You said just kind of do your thing and know it's a long process. It's a long game. Basically, that's true, right, Isaiah?
Yes, sir.
So you're not like watching everything that happens. You're just kind of living your life and doing your thing, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I'm keeping myself busy, right? Because I know the process is going to handle itself, right? Like in due time, the process will handle itself. Because I know at a certain point, you're going to get a call, you're going to get an email, right? And it's a marathon, right? And that's one thing I know a lot of people, sometimes I can get impatient as well. And I know a lot of people get impatient with this process, right? And it's not an overnight thing. So just enjoy the process, I would say, to everybody who's watching, really enjoy the process because it is a long and grueling process, right? But at the end of the day, it is very rewarding, to see you, hit these milestones for this future law enforcement career.
I'm gonna steal that from you. It's a marathon. I'm gonna take that from you next video. Sorry, it's mine now. A couple more questions for you, Isaiah. First of all, I want to tell you thank you for your time for being here. You're a very busy person. I know you had a busy morning already, but I gotta ask you a few more questions, okay?
Of course.
So a lot of people about half the people who apply for BP, actually about 60% who apply for BP, they're civilians. Do you have any advice for people who are civilians? I mean, you got a military background already, so is there a huge difference there? What would you advise for civilians going to BP?
Yeah, it's not a huge difference, right? Because I work on aircraft in the military, so I don't have any law enforcement experience, right? I have the book experience, but I don't have the street experience. So I know a lot of people are skeptical, nervous, asking, is this the right kind of career field? But like you say, there's a lot of people from different walks of life, who are able to get in, right? And that was one thing I definitely was kind of concerned about. I have no law enforcement experience, because I know a buddy of mine who tried to apply for a different federal law enforcement agency and he had experience, but he got denied.
Oh,
Right. So to me, it
there we
was
go.
like, man, I have no experience. Yes, I'm in the military, yes, I have 4 years, but I don't have the necessary experience, that pertains to federal law enforcement. I have never arrested somebody.
Right.
Right. Yes, like, I've gone to school and I've studied it, but I've never put it into practice. Right. But I'm here to say you do not need the experience, right? You just need to join Coach Mitch's class and he will tell you everything you need to know in order
Yes.
to get your foot in the door.
Thank you. Man, I've been saying for 7 years straight, you don't have to have the LEO background, right? You're living proof of that right now. You're saying right now, and sometimes people get dissuaded. They don't want to go down that path. Oh, I'm not law enforcement. I'm not military. I'm not this or that. But you just have to be one who believes in yourself, right, Isaiah?
Hmm.
I mean, that's the main thing. First of all, what do you believe in yourself? How much value do you value in your own ability to do this? Correct. The
Yes,
rest
sir.
I can help you with, right? But the LEO, You don't need that pass, right? At all. You don't need that pass at all. I got another trick question for you. Okay, Marshals, FBI, Secret Service, CBP. If you could not be BP, I said no, but you can be the other four. Which one of those four would you choose?
Man, that's a tough one. That is a tough question. I love every federal law enforcement agency, and my goal is to, if I have enough time, touch every agency for at least a couple of years.
There you go.
But if I had to choose one agency, my dream would be FBI.
I'd be darned. Really? I was thinking you Secret Service. I'm trying to figure you out, but I'm wrong again on you. Darn it! Really?
Secret Service was definitely up there.
Yeah.
Work. Hopefully, I would always say, if I go to Secret Service, I'm gonna make my way to that presidential detail, right? But the FBI, has always been a lifelong dream to be, a special agent in charge. Maybe even a deputy director. I have big dreams, big goals.
Yes, you do.
That those were, definitely on my list to one day run my own department.
I love that, man. Real quick here, though, before we end this, I want to go back. Okay, you're in the military. You're going to get out pretty soon. I mean, I got to ask one more time. So was BP always on your radar, or were you just thinking about, well, honey, I'm going to get out of the military pretty soon? And I mean, did you have a plan already? I mean, how'd you come into BP, Isaiah? Explain it to us.
Yeah. So currently, I'm studying my bachelor's of arts in criminal justice and emphasis in law organizational leadership. Right. So I always, I've always tried to put myself in a position of leadership, taking leadership courses, stepping up in work, and taking those opportunities when people shy away from it. Right. Because, you either succeed or you learn. I don't see it as failure. I see either you succeed in that job or you learn. Most times, people in that position, they don't succeed, which is fine. Right. But it's a great learning experience. Right. So I've been in many positions of leadership where I have not succeeded, but I've learned and gotten better from it.
Whoa.
So that has definitely helped me, especially taking leadership courses and just really stepping up to the plate, right? So my plan after graduating from school would have been to just get probably a smaller, local law enforcement job just to get some hands-on experience, kind of move up the ranks pretty quickly to then, once having that experience, apply to federal law enforcement, right? But once I talked to the recruiter about Border Patrol, he told me, it definitely helps that you're in the military. So you don't need the experience. You absolutely do not need the experience of law enforcement to get into this job, right? But yeah, it does help if you want to kind of move up rank, if you want to, be a GL7, GL9, right? It definitely does help, right? But you do not need it. All you need, like you said, you need confidence. You need to know what you're talking about, right? Because
Correct.
he did tell me that the hardest part, the main part that people do fail is that interview.
Correct. That's right.
Like that is the most difficult part, especially going in prepared. The interview is what kills people, right? It's not your resume, because right now they're on a mass hiring spree. They are looking for candidates.
That's right.
So anybody can get in. Well, I don't want to say anybody can get in. The right people can get in, right?
Correct.
So you're definitely more than welcome to apply. I recommend applying. But yeah, it's the structured interview that will potentially make or break you.
And then you saw some character here. You said to us, you've been in many positions of leadership, but they weren't always successful. But here you are today interviewing with me right now, which means you got back up. So sometimes you fell, right? But you got back up, correct, Isaiah?
100%. I can't let that, define me, in any way, shape, or form, because, I have my goals set high, and if I want to be able to run a department, I can't let the fear of failure, stop me, because then I won't be able to get to that point. Right. So, it's, if I fall, I get back up. Right. A wise man falls 7 times, but he stands up 8. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to continue to put myself in those positions on purpose to get that experience, to get that knowledge and information, especially from those who are ahead of me and above me. Right. And they notice that, right? People absolutely notice that when they speak to you. They notice your character and if you're a leader or not.
That's
People
right.
know if you're timid or if you're confident. Right. So that's why I do not shy away from those leadership opportunities. I want those opportunities, and sometimes, I have to fight people for those opportunities, right? Because I know, like, hey, this is what I want to do, right? And I know you don't want to do this, but I want to do this because this is what I want to do with my life. I know that I'm a leader, so this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to take charge. So that's what I do in my workplace. I definitely take charge when asked. even when not asked, I look for leadership opportunities or even classes that I can attend to further my leadership qualities, right? So that's something I do to definitely prepare myself, especially for a career in federal law enforcement, where leadership is definitely necessary. It's something that you're going to need because it's a job that's going to put you in that position. So it's either you're either going to sink or you're going to swim, right? So once I get to that position, I want to be able to float. I want to be able to go ahead and tread that water because I know it's coming.
What a lesson. That's like 2 minutes of that's a great leadership lesson right there. And you're so right because it does tie into the job. I was law enforcement, as you guys know us already. People look at you to have the leadership already there. They look at you for that guidance and direction. You're so spot on with that. Nothing too I'm going to steal from you. A wise man falls down 7 times and gets up 8 times. Is that what you said to me?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I'm taking that one from you too. You got some really good nuggets of wisdom here, and I appreciate that. Isaiah, before we close, I want to take one thing though. I want to tell you I've appreciated working with you, and I really am happy you let me know you got through the process. I get about 80% of people tell me they passed the interview. After that, I lose them. I lose like 40% of people. They're kind of gone. It's fine. They do their own thing. I get it, but I'm very honored you took the minute or two to let me know you passed. And then the big thing too, really, is to come here and tell people who watch this video for the first time, say, my God, maybe I can do this too. This man here gave us all the good information and good advice, and it's inspirational. I do this every day, so I can't really do what you're doing. You've been through my coaching program. You're showing what it's all about, and your wisdom is really helpful, Isaiah. I want to tell you, I'm humbly happy you're letting everybody know how the process works, and what they can do with their lives as well. It's very inspiring, to tell you the truth, Isaiah.
Yeah, I definitely have to give you a lot of credit, Coach Mitch, especially because I really had to bug you, really get in really find my way to get in contact with you, to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
But I'm forever grateful, for the opportunity to work with you, and all the wisdom that you've taught me. I'm definitely going to hold on to it, and I have my sister actually said she was going to apply for CBPO, and I'm definitely going to recommend her
Oh, for sure.
to go to your course,
Thank you.
but also everybody watching, I definitely 100% recommend Coach Mitch. He knows what he's talking about. Don't do this alone, right? Unless obviously you have like Leo experience and you're confident, but if not, it is okay. Definitely tune into Coach Mitch. He knows what he's talking about. He has the experience and the numbers to back it up. I'm living proof,
Yeah.
right? Because I had no Leo experience, right? And I 100% would have failed because the questions that they ask you at the pace that they ask you, it's very quick, right? And they are very impatient, right? And they definitely look for key things. The questions, how they're layered, some are pretty difficult, and if you do not have the right answers, they will not pass you through. So again, I highly recommend Coach Mitch's training program. And Coach Mitch, I want to say, after my time with BP, just know I will be in contact with you for the next agency for sure.
Yes.
We are gonna stay locked in, Coach. Because I know
Awesome.
you have other agency, practice tips and everything like that. So I just want to tell you, we are gonna be locked in, until
Love
after,
it.
So we will
That's
be locked in.
that's awesome, and thank you, man. Because I'm gonna live vicariously through you. I'm too old now, but I can live through you. Thank you very much, Isaiah. We really appreciate your time here with us. Before we go, any other wisdom for us watching right now? Anything else to tell us about, Isaiah?
Yeah, like I said, just really enjoy the process. It's a long and grueling process. Really enjoy it. Like I said, everyone's got a different timeline,
Mm,
right? So some people may get in quicker than others. Some people their processes are gonna lag behind, right?
mm.
But like I said, just really, really enjoy this process because one day you're gonna look back at it and you're gonna think, that was definitely one of the easier times of my life, right? And it definitely is definitely going to be a memory to one day tell your kids, hey, I was able to do this, or even tell your friends, I was able to do this, and this is what it's like, right? Like I said, it's not a sprint, it is a marathon. So definitely enjoy the process.
Thank you so much. It's not a sprint; it's a marathon. Isaiah, we really appreciate you giving us time today. We really, really do. And thank you again. And please let us know your progress as you go on through the steps, because we know you're going to make it, obviously. So we're behind you, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Coach Mitch, for everything you've done. Seriously, reach out to Coach Mitch. He is that guy.
You bet, my friend, and thank you too.